Hi.
Hey, Betsy, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm tired. Just came back from 6 days in Chicago.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. Went out to my nephew's wedding. My daughter lives out there too, so saw family.
I knew your daughter was out there. I didn't know your nephew was out there.
Yeah, a couple of Jeff's sisters live out there and various kids and family, Jeff's family. It's Jeff's family, and they came from California and it was cool. Finally.
Were they having the heat wave too?
Oh my God, it was 100, over 100.
Wow. So it's everywhere.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It started out there and then it creeped this way. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, when it's
apparently
hot
I
out
think,
there, it's hot.
oh yeah, no kidding. That's why I like my, I have heat pumps. So I have nice air conditioning. Thank goodness.
Yes. That's so nice.
So I think
That was a great invention.
All right.
Yep. Sounds like they're coming in maybe.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yep.
All right, perfect.
Can't see you.
No, you can't. You're right. Hold on one second. Oh, you can see me
There
now.
we go.
All
Oh,
right.
there you are.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Wednesday, June 9th, 2021 virtual/hybrid special meeting of the Scarborough, Maine Town Council. First thing is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America,
to the
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is roll call. Tony?
Councillor Clucci?
Here.
Councillor Gleisteen?
Here.
Councillor Anderson?
Here.
Councillor Katarina?
Here.
Councillor Johnson?
Here.
Councillor Hamel?
Here.
And Chairman Johnson?
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Order number 21054 is a 6 p.m. public hearing and first reading on the proposed 2021 Town of Scarborough Comprehensive Plan. We do have several steps in this process, and we have made a couple of official public hearings. So this will be the first of a few public hearings. I think before we do our part, Mr. Merrill, do you want to start the public hearing off?
Good evening. My name is Dave Merrill. I am serving as the chairman of the Long Range Planning Committee at the moment. We consist of 5 members, 2 alternates, and 2 council liaisons. We've been meeting since early 2017 over the comprehensive plan, the 2021 comprehensive plan that's before you. Through the ups and downs and the roller coasters of COVID and consultants and turnover in our committee, we've managed to bring this to an enthusiastic vote last Friday to bring it to you for review and adoption over the next month or so. First off, though, I want to give some thanks. This process would not have happened if it hadn't been for Jay and for Karen, who shepherded us through this through numerous hurdles, crunched data, interpreted data, brought in consultants, led meetings all over town through various mediums, social media, paper, neighborhood meetings, and the like. So we think we've done our diligence to vet this several times, answer the community's questions, and are now ready to bring it before you for review again and adoption. So I'll be here if anybody has questions that Jay wants some committee support on, but otherwise I will turn it over to Jay, and thank you again for seeing us, and we hope this is adopted in a rapid and succinct manner.
Thank you, sir. Jay, did you want me to share the?
Sure, why don't you start that presentation? Be great. Thank you all for having me here tonight and the committee, and allowing us to really present the comprehensive plan to you. This is really building off some significant work that has happened not only over the last number of years, but you'll remember back in the fall and winter, we had a series of public forums that really helped to shape and craft the 2021 comprehensive plan that you're being asked to consider through this adoption process. I'll talk a little bit about that. So my presentation might probably be about 15 minutes. I do want to give, I know we spent a lot of time back in the fall and winter with a bit of a deeper dive on the comprehensive plan. I am going to touch on some of the themes of the plan, but if folks are interested who are watching tonight that maybe haven't been involved, haven't had the opportunity to read the comprehensive plan, certainly those presentations from earlier 6 months ago are available on the town's website, and I would encourage folks to take a look at that or give me a call. So tonight I will talk, I'm going to start by just giving an overview of what the comprehensive plan is, talk a bit about the process to date, really help folks understand what's been occurring over the last several years. As I mentioned, I'll touch on some of the themes, the land use implications in the plan, and then we'll have a slide that really talks about a lot of the changes, modifications that occurred from that 2020 review and were incorporated into this document, and then sort of what's next. So with that, go to the next slide, please. So the comprehensive plan begins with a vision from the community. This has been articulated through the public outreach process. And it really provides a blueprint for policy for growth and development for the community moving forward, a document we can look to as we make any regulations and investments moving forward. As I just mentioned, it's really a guiding document. So the policies that we have in place, the land use zoning that we have in place all remain in place, even with the adoption of a comprehensive plan. There's a whole series, a whole lot of work that happens after adoption and implementation. I'm not going to go too deep into that tonight because really we're here talking about adoption of the plan, and certainly we'll spend considerable time as a community talking about implementation as we go forward. So with the next slide, just as a reminder, so our current adopted comprehensive plan, it's a 2006 comprehensive plan, which really we've talked about sort of serves as the foundation of this comprehensive plan. But it's worth noting that with the adoption of this plan, it replaces the 2006 plan. That becomes a historical reference document for the community, much like our comp plan of the 90s has done. And really some of the main differences, though we talk about building on a foundation, the 2006 plan was really structured as a very prescriptive plan, where the 2021 plan is really a systems approach. And we can, on the next slide, sort of talk about how the 21 plan really focuses sort of on the synergies between the diverse range of activities that the town's involved with, from housing and transportation, open space planning, budgeting, infrastructure investment, and the like. And so really rather than looking at silos, we're trying to see the connections between those items. We can jump to the next slide. So moving on now to really the process, what's brought us here. You can see this is a process, as I sort of said earlier, that began back in 2017. Really, we began as a community with our Imagine the Future meetings. As I think Dave had already alluded to, we held a series of neighborhood meetings where we went out into the community to receive feedback in the vision from folks. And that brought us to, as folks may remember, Planapalooza. That was about a week-long planning process where the consultant team came in and we went through a number of different engagement activities to receive input. With all of that, really culminated in the first draft of the plan coming from our consultants to the community in the summer of 2018. And while there was a lot of good technical work in that plan, I think when the community had laid its eyes on it and had its first read, we realized it didn't quite hit the mark with who we were and what we expected. And so the Long Range Planning Committee, having received lots of public input, reaching out to all the various committees and boards in the community, receiving that additional feedback, spent a lot of time and effort looking at adjustments and modifications to the plan, which resulted in a sort of a second draft in 2019, which still required some refinement and discussion. But that led us ultimately to March of 2020, which at that point, the Long Range Planning Committee actually did make a recommendation, voted formally on a recommendation to council on a comprehensive plan. That was about a week before the pandemic took hold, and all our lives sort of shuttered us in place for quite a while. And the plan, like everything else in our lives, took a little hiatus. Coming out of the summer, as we realized, okay, we need to keep life moving. The pandemic's not going away. Started a discussion with Tom and council leadership about what the appropriate next steps would be, and realizing, that it's been a bit of time, it made sense to re-engage the public. And that's where we got to I believe it was 3 public forums in 2020 and a council workshop. And those were very informative, not from really changing the very core of the plan, but really made some modifications that made the plan much more usable, readable, and really shaped the plan. And I'm going to talk about those in a couple more slides here. Excellent. So some of the universal themes, and we can jump right to the next slide. So there's 5 visions, not in any particular order, that really help serve, as a framework for the plan. Vision 1 talks about future land use will follow a pattern of development that is sensitive to protecting the town's natural resources. Throughout the plan, there's strategies around sustainability and conservation practices, stormwater management approaches, sea level rise adaptations, stewardship, and a growth and conservation map that really helps to set the framework for future land use. The next vision talks about future land use pattern will create opportunities for efficient delivery of services and infrastructure, resulting in fiscal sustainability. Strategies for attaining fiscal sustainability are around infrastructure investment, resiliency, finding strategic partnerships, and public service investments. Third vision states that our ordinances will support the diversity of our existing and emerging neighborhoods, centers, and open spaces. Here, there's strategies in the plan that talk about zoning modifications, home affordability and availability, active living, and really ensuring that we are a welcome community. The fourth vision is our economy will support a broad assortment of businesses that provide stability for tax base, respects natural resources, and supports opportunities for residents. Components of a healthy, sustainable local economy include entrepreneurship, branding, communication, and infrastructure. And vision 5 is about transportation network to support or will support current and future land uses that create efficiencies, which reduce the impact of traffic on residences. Here we look at strategies around improved connectivity, keeping up with changing technologies and traffic management approaches, and multimodal opportunities, just to touch on a few. The other sort of key component in the comprehensive plan is this conservation and growth map. It really sets up a framework for development and land uses, which sort of follow the strategies I'll talk about on the next slide. So what we talk about is outlying areas west of the turnpike, really retaining the rural character, significant natural resources being protected, extension of infrastructure taking place within growth areas, majority of new residential and all non-residential growth being located within designated growth areas. The identity and livability of Scarborough's neighborhoods is enhanced and complemented. Businesses are an essential part of the community and will continue to pay a significant portion of our local property taxes. And future zoning and land use regulations will be adapted as necessary to implement the plan vision. So, as I said, so the conservation and growth map is really the articulation of a lot of the strategies that are laid out in the plan. It focuses on conserving land and designated areas for targeted growth and development. As you'll note on the plan, we really identify growth and limited growth areas. This serves 2 purposes. One, it meets our minimum state requirements to get this adopted by the state, and I'll talk about what that means here at the end. But more importantly, for the community, it really gives us, by following these overarching designations, future land use and infrastructure investment decisions can be made that are specific to particular characteristic of each area. no, no two activity centers are alike, nor any two villages alike. So we really, this plan provides the overall concepts, but then we really need to drill in to the micro level, neighborhood level with each future decision that we make. So the next slide, perfect, thank you. Just, again, as we look at the limited growth areas, really there's two designated areas there. 48% of land area is in the rural residential area and 24% in conservation and open space. Those are our limited growth areas. And then we have 13% of the land areas in low to moderate non-residential and 15% in low to moderate density residential. Those are a lot of our existing neighborhoods. Next slide. So it's important to remember as we talk about and look at this plan that these lines are imperfect and they're really intended to reflect a general pattern of development. I already said, it's going to require sort of full public engagement process when we get into the details. But I just wanted to, I think this helps articulate that, a lot of the comprehensive plan talks about what we're going to do in our growth areas, and it talks a lot about growth. But we're trying to direct most of our growth to these regional centers. Those would be the sort of circles you're seeing around Oak Hill and Dunstan, as well as our regional activity center, which is encompasses the Downs, Hygas Parkway, and sort of starts to fold over towards Oak Hill. And that's really 9% of the area. So though a lot of the plan talks about growth, it's because that's where we see a lot of the challenges and opportunities moving forward, where a lot of the rest of the town largely going to remain as is. And again, there's work to be done, not to say that there's things to be done, but so with that, I think I'll just move on to really highlighting now some of the modifications from the 2020 process that we went through. I'm not going to run through all these, but just to highlight a few. There's an addition of an implementation strategy. It's interesting. This is one of the things that was originally in the plan, but it didn't quite serve the needs. And the long range planning committee was struggling with it. We pulled it out. And then as the discussion sort of warranted, we realized, yeah, we really do need to build that back in. And we have a much more robust and effective implementation strategy now moving forward. So that was very effective. There's references about monitoring the pace and impact of growth, the clarification between the relationship of this plan and the 2006 plan, which I touched on earlier. Call out pages describing the impacts of COVID, which who knew about that in 2017, or the development of the Downs. Based on some of the discussion council had through the growth management work, some sensitivity around social, cultural, and economic diversity, looking at implicit bias. And then again, coming out of the 2020 process, one of the things that we were asked for by Tom and council leadership was to have Greater Portland Council of Governments take a read of this and do some copy edit for us. And so that helped the readability aspect of the plan quite a bit. So I'll move on just to the last items here that I'm going to talk about is the review and adoption process. Again, council has built in additional layers for review and public engagement, which is great. And so that really includes tonight's public hearing, a public hearing next week with Planning Board and Long Range Planning Committee, and as well as a public hearing on the 30th with the anticipation of a potential vote by council.
Jay, if I could,
Yeah.
my mistake, I believe the council also wants to do a workshop next week on the 16th as well.
Okay.
So that's just my fault for not
Yeah.
bringing you in on that.
Workshop, hearing. I'm ready. We're ready, right, Dave?
Lots of the same stuff.
Yep. So yeah, and I think it is important just to note that adoption of the plan that's an action by the council. And so ultimately it falls to you all. And then following adoption, there is a final regulatory step in which the state reviews the plan for consistency with the goals and guidelines of the Growth Management Act. That was one of the things that GPCOG helped us with in their review as well. They identified a couple of items that might have been dinged for in that process. And I just so everyone has expectations, typically there's a back and forth. Once you send it to the state for their review, there's a bit of back and forth between the town and the state about, what's in the plan, because it's something we've worked on for 4 or 5 years. We know quite well. They're trying to read it and understand it. And so certainly staff, long range planning committee are prepared to help council in the town through that process. So that's the end of my presentation. I just want to, sort of conclude by thanking all that have participated in the process, with a particular thank you to all the members of the Long Range Planning Committee. We've had members who have been on from day one, frankly, from day 2006 all the way through. I mean, there's some long haulers, which is wonderful. And there's been some new voices that have been just within the last few months brought on the committee. And really those fresh eyes have been very helpful in the process as well. So I want to say thank you to the members. That's what I have.
So Jay, let's do this. You get a break and then we'll do any more of the public hearing and then we'll ask you questions afterwards, but that way we'll give you a little bit of pause. Is there anybody in the audience, either in front of me or in Zoom, that would like to speak to the comprehensive plan? If you want to go right up to the microphone and just state your name and address.
I'm Ann McClellan. I'm the owner of the Dollhouse 37 Morning Street at Higgins Beach. And I'm still concerned that the wording for Higgins Beach did not get changed, that we were fully developed, but to allow limited development, because I hate to see the character of Higgins Beach change. And I'm not sure, because you have talking implementation, but I'm not sure what is intended by limited development. But it seems that we're always having to fight a little bit about how it is developed. And Higgins Beach is in itself quite unique and has been part of my life for a long time, and as many other people. So that still bothers me, that it's in limited development. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Go on up, just state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Marvin Gates, 423 Black Point Road, Scarborough. I'm here actually as a member of the Long Range Planning Committee. I'm one of the new voices that Jay was nice enough to say added something. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I think all of you can sort of relate to the fact that when you join something like the Long Range Planning Committee, maybe even the council, there's not a large rule book or instruction manual. You jump in. And frankly, when we were working on this for the last 6 months, we worked in sections. And when you read the sections, some are general, some detailed, but you're really approaching it section by section. And that was helpful. However, at the very end, when we were approaching sending it to you, I undertook doing sort of a copy edit read of it. I have a big ego. I thought, if my name's going on this, I don't want any little mistakes. Something like that, anyway. And the reason I'm speaking, reason I came, other than to see Dave, who I've been looking at on Zoom and otherwise haven't seen him, don't know him, is to urge the public. I'm not really speaking to my esteemed council members or even to my very esteemed Long Range Planning Committee members and town staff. I'm really speaking to, I suppose, everyone, but those approaching the comprehensive plan for the first time. I find it, and I'm sure this is the wrong word, but I think it has a novelistic quality that requires reading from page 1 to page 170 before you really go into it. And it's not a dictionary. It's not that kind of a manual. I think it has those approaches to it. And really, that's it. I appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. Any other members? Marvin, it's great to see, put the face with the voice as well. So yeah, usually you're up here somewhere. Any others? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion and then we'll use our time to talk amongst ourselves and ask any clarifying questions. So we have lots of people at the ready, so let's get it on the floor and then we'll discuss. So
So moved.
Second.
Okay, perfect. Anybody have any questions, questions for staff, Jay, long-range planners, any individual comments, anything you want? So. Counselor Johnson.
Just great work, looking at the initial 2020, or was it 2018? Whatever it was. Still a solid document. I think it flows really well, and kind of what Marvin just said. It's I mean, you're not going to sit down and read it in an hour, but I think it really is. It's an interesting document. I don't care. I've been in town 37 years, something like that. I learned a lot about the town just reading the document. And so it's actually enjoyable reading. And then you should read it from A to Z, and then maybe go back and focus in an area of interest. But again, just great work. I've got a few suggestions on changes, but I'm going to wait for the workshop, but there'll be few and they'll be minor. I'll wait for the workshop on that next week, correct? Is that the right process?
Yeah, we're gonna
for
have
that?
yes, we'll have a workshop that's half it's the spa contract zone out in Beach Ridge and the other half will be here. So,
Okay.
yep. So it's probably gonna be about 45 minutes to vote into this, I'd say. Any others? Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody as well. I was new to the council back in December when we reviewed this for the first time. And so I really dug into it and had a lot of opinions and views. And I appreciate Jay, the Long Range Planning Committee, and everybody taking my feedback as well as the public's and that final step of the process. And I really appreciate the due diligence you went through over the past 6 months to really kind of get it to the finish line. And, you know, it was really good when I read it back in December, and it's really great now. So again, just thank you for taking it that extra mile and spending the time over the past few months to get it there.
Any others? Councilor Cucci?
Yeah, I'll echo what's been said. It's a complex topic. You've got divergent views on a lot of these issues, and it's kind of tough to thread the needle. And I think you've done a good job so far, and you've brought in the right voices to help point to what's right for Scarborough. And this can change or evolve, right? So there's some towns that never get this thing passed because they're afraid to meet in the middle. And I think what you brought before us is a good compromise solution. It paints a picture of what Scarborough, where we should be heading, we hope to be heading, but it's not definitive enough that it boxes us in where we can't pivot down the road. So good work. I encourage the public to continue to stay engaged as we bring it to a conclusion and provide feedback. And we will be having a workshop that, there might be some small changes that come out of that, but I think it's a great, it's ready. It's ready for us and ready to take it home.
Yeah, and I think just for all of us, if you have small edits and changes, come with page numbers and paragraph numbers, and we'll just like the GMO, get as specific as humanly possible on those. So, Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, I participated in this along with others, including Jean Marie as liaison to the Long Range Planning Committee, and I want to thank in particular the folks who signed on to do all of that work. That includes a couple of people that were there at the very beginning. I think, you mentioned Dave Merrill, also Rick Chenet, they were there at the very beginning when we wrote the 2006 comp plan, which was 300 pages long and really voluminous document that ended up with most of the changes that we have in place now in terms of zoning and development. When I first read the version of this that came forward as, a year or so ago, I, like many people in the public, reacted to it. And I have to say that I thought looking back now, we have all benefited from that. And I think that the brunt of that work was borne by Jay Chase, and the planners and the long range planners. So I want to thank them in particular, in addition to the town staff, for all of that work, all of those hours upon hours. And I also like what Marvin had to say. It's like reading a document, like reading a novel, like reading a War and Peace, and then trying to walk through it and, remember all the characters and figure out if you included everything. This document today that we'll be reviewing over the next several weeks is a completely different document, much tighter than earlier versions. I think it's captured the key priorities, including new ones around environment, growth and development, and sustainability. The implementation plan is much more robust. We had barely an outline when we started. This is vastly improved and clearly executable. There's a saying, even average strategies that are implemented well and executed are very effective. So I think though we've taken a position on a lot of these things, there's room for refinement and substantive enhancements. I'm not suggesting that would be done in an editing process, but it would be done through the public process as we implement this plan. And I think we should remember, these are not stone tablets. All plans are subject to change, and very often they change at the beginning at the point of implementation. I think that we've addressed a number of new realities. People have mentioned COVID-19. We've talked about the downs. These are things that, that weren't in the plan to begin with. So, and it flows well from the 2006 plan. So I look forward to, the next couple of weeks and encourage the public to weigh in. And I want to thank everybody for the good work and look forward to putting this to bed, or at least down for a nap. So.
A very long nap. And members of the public, if you want to, I know that you spoke about a specific section. If you want to send me directly the page number, and the more specific we get and the more places that we look at, it's the easiest for us to talk about. So, Councilor Caterina.
Yeah, having been involved with this since the beginning, I have the greatest admiration for the members of staff in particular who put up with a lot of people who were unhappy with this and unhappy with that, had to change this and had to change that. And then COVID comes along and derails, and then we get back on board. But so I want to thank them very much for their work, as well as the Long Range Planning Committee, of which I've been the liaison again since this started. And as Councilor Hamel said, this is a living document. So just because we, pass this now, it can be amended or changed, but it serves as the blueprint for how the town's going to move forward for the next 10 years. So I think we're in a really good place. It's been enjoyable to watch how it's evolved, but this final product is definitely something that I will fully support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Councilor Gleason?
Yeah, so it's definitely a consequential year for the town, setting direction for the next decade with the growth management ordinance and the comp plan and the charter revisions that will go to referendum in November. So I know it can get overwhelming, but if folks are able to engage, it's definitely worth it. And I think people are going to look back to 2021 and really see that this was a very consequential year in the history of the town of Scarborough. So I'd say dig in, get engaged.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, Tody, you want to call the vote?
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Gleisteen,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Oh, yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, order number 21055 is a first reading and schedule a public hearing on Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 on the First Amendment of the Scarborough Down Omnibus Municipal Development and Tax Incremental Financing District and the development program therefore, in the approval of a credit enhancement agreement with Avesta US Route 1 LP relating to a proposed affordable housing project. Tom, would you like to lead this off? And do you want me to present anything or?
No, I don't
Okay.
believe we have any documents to present. All the relevant documents were part of the meeting agenda. And so they were quite lengthy and they are legal documents. We do have Phil Saucier, our town attorney, here tonight in the event there are questions about any of the different components of this. Yes, just to kind of lead into this, the order is structured in such a way there's actually kind of a dual purpose served by this order. By action of council, and what we're asking you to consider is to amend the downtown TIF district to enable, to allow this additional parcel. It's a 0.44 acre parcel to be included within the existing nearly 1,000 acre downtown TIF that was created 4 or 5 years ago. Just as an aside, this was property, and I still haven't figured out how we kind of missed this boundary change, if you will. This was town-owned property, and by all rights, I think what we did is followed a zone boundary that was since changed as opposed to the ownership, property boundary. But nonetheless, this is a detail that's important. And so part of this action will correct that and realign the boundary to include the parcel in question. The second component would be to approve a brand new credit enhancement agreement that would enable essentially reimbursement of 75% of the increased taxes or the increment, taxes from the increment for a period of 20 years to Avesta Housing, who is the affordable housing developer. The project is for 31 senior affordable units. I believe they're all 1 bedroom in character, in type. And Nate House, representing Avesta Housing, is here. And perhaps I've just misstated something. I saw him get up quickly.
31 bedrooms and 1 efficiency.
Okay, I beg your pardon. 31 bedrooms and 1 efficiency, so 31 units in total. Again, this council is, I think, quite conversant and familiar with this process, having gone through it about less than a year ago with another property in the downtown district. This approach very much mirrors that same approach for the Jocelyn Place project. And in that regard, we did include some fairly unique and specific provisions in the proposed credit enhancement agreement in section 3.1C, essentially requiring that the project remain consistent with our definition of affordable housing. That's actually an exhibit to the credit enhancement agreement. And secondarily, that there be implemented a local preference for individuals living or working in Scarborough. And that language has been inserted, negotiated with Avesta, and is included and proposed for your consideration as well. It's important that just to appreciate where those unique provisions are located. They're in the provisions of the credit enhancement agreement around actually making payment subject to this document. And so the consequence of failure to comply with either of those is that payment's not made. And so there's real consequence to compliance. And that compliance is also tracked with annual certification requirements to the town. So we'll have good oversight and management of this going forward. So that's a quick high-level overview, and I think we've got the resources here to go deeper and provide detail as you wish.
Right. Before we take it up, Nate, did you want to add anything to that, or does that cover it?
No, that was a great summary. Thank you, Tom.
Want to hang? I'm sure we'll
Oh,
pepper
yeah.
you with something. So before I go to us, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this on Zoom or in front of us? Okay, with that, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion, and we have people at our disposal if we have questions as well. So Councilor Johnson?
Just a process question. This is a two-step action item, is that correct? Number one, expand the TIF line. Number two, okay, but is it,
We've combined both those components in the single order.
okay, okay, thank you.
Anything, Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I just, there's had been some discussion about making this an affordable housing TIF district on its own. And through some discussion with the town manager, I advocated for expanding the downtown district. And a big part of it is we're on the verge of being a minimum receiver. We've talked about this a couple of times. We probably will be no longer a minimum receiver in the coming months. And there's a big financial benefit that comes from being able to pool the growth in the overall downtown district to capture that value, to offset costs associated with CEAs like this or other projects that we might want to take on. So pooling those allows you to really leverage or take advantage of the incentives that are given to us by the state to offset overall costs for the town. So that's part of the reason why it's coming forward as a downtown amendment as opposed to a separate TIF district.
Thank you. Councilor Gleisting?
Yeah, so I did have a question on that because an affordable housing TIF also allows you to shelter the revenue. I mean, John, are you saying that you can't shelter the revenue with the affordable housing TIF, or because it's in a separate bucket, it doesn't count the same? And could you reference where you're getting that information?
Yeah, so if you create an affordable housing TIF district for this one parcel, the only dollars going into that fund are going to be the taxes that are paid on this one parcel. So when you're giving 75% of those taxes back to the developer, there's not much money that's going to be left there. I like that you can use them for a greater range of project costs. But if there's only a couple $1,000s in the account, it's not worth the administration to go through to try to find places where you can spend the small dollars. Whereas if you combine it with the downtown TIF, then you can have larger projects that can help capture more of the value.
Yeah, I don't think it would work that way though. So 25% of the revenue from the affordable housing TIF wouldn't go to the town, it would go into the general fund. So the 3% of the revenue that you're talking about is what's required by the economic development TIF that we set into a special fund. So 75% under the economic development fund will go to the developer if we approve this. 3% will go to that special fund and 22% will go to the taxpayers. Under the, I believe, I think the benefit would be the same, a minimal receivership, because we would be protecting that value underneath the TIF. The CEA is different from the TIF. And so in that case, 75% would go to the developer and 25% would go to the general fund. That's my understanding. And I guess the one advantage I can think of with an affordable housing TIF is we could give 50% to the developer and 50% to the taxpayers. And still the developer would get 3 points. They're looking for the number of points they can get to get this approved. So the 20 years at 75% gives them 3 points, and the 50% at 30 years, I believe, could also give them 3 points. So that would be one of the considerations, to run the dollars on that with the affordable housing TIF. So yeah, with an affordable housing TIF, I don't think towns typically shelter that revenue from the general fund. I mean, I suppose they might. We could say we were sheltering some of it and putting it into the affordable housing fund that we already have. So I guess I'm just not quite following your logic. And I did have one question for Nate, but I see Jean Maria has her hand up, and I got to check my notes back for the question I had for Nate.
Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, my question is, could I have a reminder, is this property already in the downtown CEA without this 0.44, and the 0.44 is just to correct it?
Approximately half of the subject parcel is included currently. The total parcel that's subject to this proposal, a portion of it was not, and that's what this order does.
Right. So I guess, let me read, my question came out backwards. So in other words, this putting the 0.44 into the downtown TIF just increases what the rest of the property already is in.
Yes, it is increased. It is increasing the area of the downtown TIF, correct?
Okay. So I agree with Mr. Clucci that there's no sense in, changing it all and making it an affordable housing TIF. Just correct this deficiency that we had and move forward. That's just where I'm at with it. Thanks.
Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, I had a question kind of following up on the TIF issue with the CEA. I had some concerns about accretion or expansion of existing TIFs. And so we actually we're doing that in this case, where we're expanding the TIF to include all of this particular project. So does that mean in other TIFs that we have, for example, in town, that there would be possible for us to expand them in this fashion, or is this just unique to an affordable housing?
No, certainly it's within the power of the council to modify their TIF districts. There's limitations through statute in terms of total area that can be included, but frankly, I think there's quite a bit of latitude still existing within those statutory limitations. But the council is free to do that. You must certainly report that and go through DCD in this case to gain acceptance, but it's within your authority, yes.
And I just have one other question, but I'm going to wait until later till the other questions are asked. Okay, thanks.
Any others? Councilor Gleisting?
Yeah, so in the language for the preference for Scarborough reference, it says as allowed by law. And you know, I was wondering if Nate could comment on what those restrictions are, you know, by it said, I think federal and state law. And I know, you know, we did Jocelyn, they said there would be a point system assigned to people who wanted the housing, which, you know, there was a point for being a veteran and then another point for being a Scarborough resident or worker or something like that. And so Nate, can you comment on the clause where it says as allowable by state and federal law and what the program would look like, how you would prioritize Scarborough residents?
Well, the as allowable by state and federal law is really just a catch-all to protect against any law changes that would prohibit you from putting a preference in your tenant selection plan for residents of a particular town. So that's just catch-all protection language, you know, for us as the owner. As to the actual system for preferences for Scarborough residents, if you had two identical residents who, you know, both 55 plus, both making $42,000 a year, and, you know, both applied at the exact same time, the preference would be given to the person who either lived or worked in Scarborough. That's how it would work. I don't believe our tenant selection plans operate on a point-based system. That's not my area of expertise. But how it was explained to me is essentially if you have identical tenants, or you basically give the preference to the Scarborough tenant if they both apply at the exact same moment. Otherwise, it would go first come, first serve. You have to be fair. You know, there's a whole range of criteria you have to go down and look through.
You have a lot of people on a waiting list already for housing, you said at one point?
We do. I mean, I have some numbers here that I gave, I think, to the Finance Committee back in March. So at one of our properties in Gorham, it's a similar population. There's 130 for 24 units. At another property in Kennebunk, there is 150 approximately for about 30 units there. You know, a market study that we commissioned for this region for the greater Portland market has indicated there's around 3,000 older adults, 55 plus, who are in need of or who qualify for this housing. So go ahead.
Do you happen to have a number of Scarborough residents that are on that wait list, or do you not catalog it that way?
I do actually think it's cataloged by zip code in certain cases, but I don't have that in front of me.
The one thing I do recall, Nate, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that though you maintain these waiting lists, they are for specific projects. And so they don't necessarily transfer over to new projects.
Correct.
You would create a new waiting list,
Yes.
a new list, if you will, once this project is viable and
Yes.
you're in a position to lease.
Exactly. And you would have people from the other wait list if they wanted to live in Scarborough, they could do that. And if they were competing against a Scarborough resident, you know, the resident.
So it strikes me the wait list is relevant to demonstrating need in the region.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just did want to follow up, Nate, just to make sure that I said that right, because it probably behoove us to run the numbers. So if you got a 50% CEA for 30 years, that would give you the same points as the 75% TIF for 20 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Just to follow up on that, Nate, I don't think we could give a 30-year CEA, correct? We're probably at 27-year CEA at this point, and would that still give you three points to Betsy's? Am I correct? Because that TIF district only has about 27 years.
Well, I think the suggestion from Councilor Gleisteen is that you could, through the creation of a new affordable housing TIF district,
Okay.
you could create a brand new 30-year term, presumably.
Okay,
But
I wasn't
Right, so-
following that line.
Yeah, so the dollar difference we're looking at, Paul, is 22% of the revenue from this project. The tax revenue from this project is going to go to the general fund. And under under affordable housing TIF, if we did 50/50, 50% would go to the general fund. So it's a difference between 22% and 50%. It's worth looking at the numbers.
To answer your question, Chair, 27 would not get us the
Yeah.
3 points.
Okay, so, yeah. So the line would be, we'd have to create a whole new
Yeah.
district.
And just remember that though it's 50%, it's 25% less each year, but it's 10 more years.
It's 10 more years, correct.
Right.
Something to do with time value of money there.
Right, so the reason they both get 3 points is because they're financially equivalent.
Yeah, right.
If you discount the cash flows back to today.
Yes, correct.
Councilor Johnson?
Couple questions. Nick, if all goes well, what's your perceived schedule to, for the building?
The spring. We would find out about our funding. Their applications due August 26th this year. We would find out by the end of September. 50% plans by November, 90% by January, in the ground, April. Sorry.
Okay, and just what's your normal procedure to advertise so you can gather some Scarborough citizens that want to get on the waiting list?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. We love to advertise directly, direct mail, online, email blasts. We had a project. We usually start a email list that you can add your name to. We had a project in Portland, 977 Brighton Avenue, Wessex Woods. At one point, the interest list for that had like 900 people on it. So we send out. We have people subscribe to our list and we give them updates on when to expect lease up. From a financial perspective, we have to lease these as quickly as possible. So we're engaging the community probably 6 months before we even complete the project.
Okay. And one last question.
Can I follow up on that real quick?
Yeah.
Would it be inappropriate for us to use our newsletter?
That's what I was
Right.
thinking.
I mean, I know they're not.
I don't think so. I would have to check. I don't see any problem with that.
Just as a notice to the general
Right.
public.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not in need, do you have a family member or something like that? We could do that, coordinate.
I believe
coordinate
that's,
something.
yeah, I think that's allowed. I can't see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
We could certainly drive business to them.
Right.
Could we work that out that we could do that before you did your typical channels?
I don't see why that wouldn't be allowed.
Okay.
And one last question for Councilor Clucci. Was this discussed in the finance committee between the affordable housing TIF and the other TIF and the 50%, the 75% and the 20, all that? I don't recall that coming out of the finance committee.
So we had a lot of discussions. We didn't have anything definitive about recommending one versus the other.
Okay.
Any others? Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, no, I support this as a TIF and as a CEA. Given that we didn't have the opportunity to talk about it at finance, I would like the opportunity, even if this moves forward tonight, that at our next meeting, we really kind of dig into those two scenarios and really come out with a recommendation. It seems like it might be negligible. It sounds like based on the conversation. And so I think, Jean Marie raises a really great point of we're correcting a deficiency. Let's not overcomplicate this, but I do think it would be good to just run the numbers side by side, really make sure that's going to benefit Scarborough, and so that we can get the points for the housing project as well. So again, I would support this either way, whichever one. I just think it's just deciding which one of the two is probably the better of the two for the taxpayers.
In the meantime, too, I can send you the Jocelyn Place stuff because
Yeah,
I'm sure it's comparable.
yeah.
So I have it sitting there, so I can at least prime that for you. So, Councilor Gleistein?
Yeah, so I think, that's good. That would be a good, fairly easy thing to do. Nate has a good spreadsheet that is, pretty easy to use. So I also used Nate's spreadsheet. One of the things that we got to Jocelyn that we talked about, and that we've talked about in general with CEAs, especially in the economic development CEAs, is the opportunity costs, or in this case, the developer has said they would put market rate housing in there. So I think another comparison to make during this process would be to think about what market rate housing would be assessed at in today's environment, and compare that over time, because the CA is one thing based on the value that the values that Nate has is expecting with this building, where they're expecting it to come in to be assessed. I think with Jocelyn, we talked about, that it would probably be office space, that type of thing. We haven't really had a very good process for doing that, but we could at least approximate, if the market value was 1.5 times, what we think this building will be assessed at, what does that mean? If it's, if it's double, what does that mean? So that's something I think, that we've talked about quite a bit, at least with the last one and within the economic development TIF, is to look at just opportunity wise, opportunity cost, because this is the Avesta is also, of course, an opportunity for the town in a different way. But what's the monetary part of that?
Councilor Caterina?
In normal circumstances, I understand what Councilor Gleisten is saying, but if we think we're going to get market rate housing in there, the developer has made it pretty clear that they can't afford to do that at this point. Building costs are outrageous right now. For materials, labor is hard to find, so there would be could be a pretty big delay in getting anything in there. And then who knows what would happen. So I'm that I was real big on the workforce housing. I thought that made a lot of sense. Regretfully, there's no assistance on the state or federal level yet for building workforce housing. So that being said, I think our only route at this point, in order to be timely and get something online and provide something that is needed in the community, is to go the route that we're going.
Well, the developer, when we did ask him, said he would put market rate housing in, and we do have a lot of, we're all out of growth permits, and there does seem to be, despite the increased costs, there seems to be an enormous amount of interest in people building in Scarborough. We actually had to restrict growth to cut back. I mean, especially on the multi-family housing, which is what I believe this was originally proposed as. I think there were 8 townhouses, some other stuff. I don't know. The plans changed a number of times. So yeah, that would be interesting if the developer said, that he wasn't going to put anything there. At the last meeting, we asked him what would go there if we don't approve it. He said market rate housing.
Right, but I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, we're kind of talking to each other here.
Sorry.
Yeah, you are. We're just watching. We're good.
But where I'm going with this is there would definitely be a delay in even getting that built, given that the square footage of what could be built there, and then what would have to be charged for a rate for leasing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it would cause delays in getting anything done there. So I'd rather move forward than wait for changes in the market or whatever. They could be 2-3 years coming.
So has the
but that's just.
developer-
All right, we're gonna shift away from this, because at this point, I think you guys have lost 5 of us. So with that, Councilor Anderson, and then
Yeah, I just, I feel like comparing at this point, affordable housing to market rate, while I think it's an exercise maybe we could do at finance, to me, this is about an affordable housing project at this point. And so, I think, we should be looking at it that way. We should be looking forward. I understand the history of the project overall, and it was something at the beginning that I think I let cloud my judgment in terms of supporting this. But at this point, I think what we have before us is an affordable housing project that we really need in Scarborough, that would really help benefit a lot of people. And I think at the same time is very aligned with our draft comprehensive plan that we'll hopefully be approving. So we don't get too much scope around this. I think the TIF, looking at the TIFs, is probably a good step. And Councilor Gleisten, we can do that work on the market, but to me, this is about an affordable housing project. So that information won't be as useful to me in terms of making a decision in terms of supporting this.
Councilor Johnson, and then Councilor Hamel.
I agree with Councilor Anderson. I think we're beyond the point of market, way beyond that point. And just to share a personal note on this. I've met with the neighbors up there 3 times. And the opinions I get from them is, they live off Route 1. They really don't want the growth there to begin with. However, it is coming. They understand that the landowner has every right to do it. They would much prefer a senior affordable building than a market rate, because at least they know who their neighbors are going to be.
Council Hamel?
Yeah, someone made the comment that they understand now that the process we followed to get here, and I have to say that I would like to sit down with that person and have them explain it to me, because this has been a tortuous process. We've had lots of stops and starts, and this is not being critical of anybody, but things have changed. We had COVID, we had the developer come back and ask for something we didn't like. We were ready to vote the thing down at that point in time. Then we said, send it to finance and try to find a way to do it without affordable housing. Now it comes back, and don't do a TIF and don't do several other things. And it's back as a TIF and an affordable housing project. So, whatever path we followed, maybe we don't want to follow it again, but it's here now. I said, the idea of it going back into finance, and this is no knock on the finance committee, let's please not do that. We don't have to do that. Let's talk about the merits here and then decide to go forward. We complained about someone trying to retrade a deal. We're doing precisely that as a council. Let's not do that.
Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I just want to express that I support this. I think the vision for the redevelopment of the old public safety site, not just the affordable housing project component, but the rest of what's going on is a good fit for the town. And it's, everybody should run their own numbers and try to understand the details. I mean, the fact is market rate's probably less advantageous to the town at this point. If we're no longer minimum receivers, we're probably going to make more money on this as a town, which I feel bad about, but I like what you've brought forward. I like the proposal. Yeah, I'd like to see it happen.
Okay. Councilor Geising?
Yeah, so in terms of supporting this, yeah, so I have run the numbers. It's fine, to not get down to that level of detail, but I do think what Councilor Hamel said is important. How we got here is we had a town referendum-wide vote to build a new public safety building, and one of the very important factors of that was selling that property, and the VAT vote was very, very close, and a lot of that was monetary. It wasn't because people don't support public safety. It was the great expense of that public safety building, which is it's a great facility, and it's a really good thing that has happened for the town. But it was very close, and it was close because of the money. And there was conversation at the time about keeping the town property. And that was decided during that process to not do it and to maximize that for revenue to help pay off the public safety building. And so when Tom came with that proposal to sell this property, he said, there's no CEA being requested, will not be a CEA. There's going to be no subsidy from the town. And that council, which was right before myself and Councilor Johnson got on, voted to accept that. Had this proposal been in front of them, I don't know. It would be interesting to see. But then COVID happened, and we granted an extension, which I think was a win-win for everyone, for the potential buyer to look at this. We also gave the developer 2 zoning changes. So Councilor Johnson talked about the folks not wanting that. We could have voted no to those zoning changes. 5-2, a couple of us were not in favor of those zoning changes because of the impact to the neighborhood. But at that point in time, we were still going forward with a project that people could be proud of, that the town was not subsidizing. And so I just think in Scarborough, we should stick with some things that we start with. And this is one of those things that, while not explicit, I believe it was an implicit commitment to the town that we were going to maximize the tax revenue on this property. And I think the calculation, talk about a complicated calculation, getting into whether or not it's going to bump us in and out of maximum receivership, is minimum receivership is difficult. but I do think there's a larger principle at play here. And that is, what the town thought they were getting when they voted for this by referendum, when you sold the property, and when it was approved, when we did the zoning changes, and all of those things that we've taken this path to here today to not put this in. I had an earlier got to talk to Nate today. These guys are great. Avesta is a great company, so it's nothing about that. But I won't be supporting this because I think that we need to stick with what we had planned to do with this property when we passed the referendum and when the property was sold.
Thank you. Any others? Before I call the vote, go ahead. Sure. Yeah.
Just for the record, I just want to make sure the public understands that the CEA is for that one building only, does not include Harbor Fish or any of the other commercial development that's going on the site. It's the one building only. That's just for the record.
And we did receive all the monies we thought we would for the sale of the building. as well,
Correct.
which was what was voted, which was on the actual referendum question. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about, we're trying to fulfill a couple of goals here, and if you take just one, what is the maximum benefit for the taxpayer, for example, or you take one, what's the maximum benefit for affordability? It's really hard to do that. I think that we are compromising in a way by trying to accomplish a couple of things, but that's still a positive. It's still a net positive, and it still, does serve a broader segment of the public. So I just think we're in this mode where this idea of total wins and losses is just, we shouldn't be thinking in those terms. We should be thinking in terms of how can we advance, many interests of the town in the best way. So, and in this case, we're doing a couple. So it's different than where we started. Absolutely.
So before I call the vote, do we want to be clear? I don't want finance to do more work if it's not necessary. So I guess, Clucci, do you want to hear from us, or do you want to just go at Councilor Clucci? Do you want to hear from us, or do you not? Are you just going to, as chair, just?
If it's the will of the council for us to bring this up, I would be happy to. I don't feel that it's necessary.
Right, and I just didn't want to create work. So this is separate of the vote. I don't need this to go to finance, so I just wanted to say that just to be clear. Is anybody else gonna? Okay.
I was watching heads.
Yeah, okay, right. I don't want to.
No, I do not support this going to finance. I don't think it's necessary. If the chair of the finance committee doesn't think it's necessary, I'm completely comfortable moving forward with this, with what we know now.
I would just add, just for my own edification, whoever can help me look at
Yep.
the data. You guys have the history with Jocelyn.
Yep.
So whether it's in finance or your picture, yeah, we can talk about it. Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to go to finance.
Okay, anything else? Sorry, there was a lot of talking around that. I just thought we should get a consensus.
Good.
All right, Cody, you want to call the vote?
Sure. Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Counselor Gleifstein?
No.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
And motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Cody?
Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Counselor Gleifstein?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
We're adding one more Wednesday to the calendar, everybody. Look for the email. Yes.
What?
Unanimous, thank you.
Yeah, we're meeting every Wednesday.